Yeah, we go on the bottom right, the bottom of base, and we base Bryce the Toner Bonan, how you aim betfila umaim shoisesin al birka. The person was in the middle of davening Shmona Esrei, and there was water cascading down his knees. Obviously, he needed to go to the bathroom to urinate, and he couldn't hold it in, and it landed up spilling all the way down his trousers. Poisek, he should stop davening ad sheichlu amayim, until he stops urinating, v'chayzer umispalel, and then he should continue davening. In other words, even though a person obviously can't go to the bathroom in the middle of Shmona Esrei, there is a difference between what we call gedolim, which mean to go to the toilet in order to defecate, and ketanim, which is to urinate. If it's urinate, there's no isa deraisa, and therefore it's okay as long as he waits for the water to stop coming, the urine to stop coming. He's permitted to continue davening. So the Gemara asks in that part one of the sugya. The Gemara asks in part two a question: Lahechan choizer. Where should he go back to when he's gone over his unfortunate accident? Where should he return to? And we have a machlokes Rav Chisda Rav Hamnona in part three of our Gemara. Rav Chisda Rav Hamnona. Rav Chisda's Chad Amar Choiz l'Reish v'Chad Amar l'Makom shepasuk. We don't know who said what. One of them said go back to the very beginning, and the other one said go back to the place where this accident happened. And that's part two, which is really an answer to the question where you should go back to. Machlokes says he go back to, one says he goes back to the beginning, and the other one says he goes back to the place where he left off from. The Gemara suggests that the machlokes is in the following topic. Again, we're going on to Chof Gimel Amud Aleph. Let's say the machlokes is in regard to this. Let's say the machlokes between these two Amoraim is when you had a pause in your davening enough to complete the entire davening, you go back to the beginning, and that's one opinion. The other opinion holds, even though you had such a long pause, you can always just go back to the place where you left off from. And let's say the machlokes is in when you have a very long pause, and it's a general machlokes in terms of any pause, that's when that's either when you go back to the beginning or else you go back to the place that you left. Now, I understand this to be a kasha in part 4, meaning, and if this would be their machlokes, it would be a generalized machlokes and not specific to this point. And that's why the Gemara says, let's say they're arguing in this pre-established machlokes, to which the Gemara in part 5 dispels it and says, no. Rav Ashi, Amar Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi, Hi, im shah, im loy shah mivoile. If the machlokes was about the amount of time when you interrupted and do you go back to the beginning or back to the place where you left, they should have mentioned that explicitly. Ella, and this is going to be in part 7, Ella de Kuli Alma, im shah kedei ligmaris kula chayzel roish. Everyone agrees that if you postponed enough that you could have completed the entire Shmona Esrei, you go back to the beginning. What is a machlokes over here? It's a very specific machlokes about urination. V'hasam b'deloi shah k'mivligi. Over here we're talking about where there wasn't enough of a time to go back. You didn't stop long enough that would have taken you to complete the entire Shmona Esrei. And what is the machlokes about? The ma'asava gavra dechuyahu v'ein roi. That the one who holds that you go back to the beginning, he holds that a person, when he started to daven and he needed to go to the bathroom, he really wasn't fitting to daven, and therefore his tefillah from the get-go was not considered a good prayer, because when he went into it, he needed the toilet, and therefore he couldn't have prayed to begin with, and therefore everything he prayed was not considered valid, and therefore it goes back to the beginning, because what he did was not done. His tefillah is nishkein tefillah. Umar savar, and the other opinion holds, gavre chazihu. No, that's perfectly okay, that because even though he couldn't have waited until he finished his tefillah, still needing to go for ketanim, and that's a word we're going to be using from here onwards, which means urination, needing to go for ketanim doesn't stop your tefillah from being a tefillah. Therefore, he's a gavra chazia, he's a suitable person, he's not a gavra dechuya, pushed off person, he's a suitable person. Tefillah, so his tefillah is good tefillah, and therefore he should just go back to the place where he stopped. Boom. End of the first sugya on Daf Chof Gimel Amud Aleph. Second sugya, we have a braysa and nitzrach lenekava, the person that needs to go to the bathroom. Al yispalel. Don't daven, go to the bathroom. V'im yispalel tefillah so te'eva. If he did daven, his tefillah is another great word, abomination. Brisa, part 1. Part 2. Amar Rav Zvid, V'temer Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Zvid, and there are those that say it was Rav Yehuda. Lo shani ele she'enu yachol hashois ba'atzmai. When is his tefillah, his prayer considered an abomination, a to'eva? That's when he couldn't hold himself in. We'll see how long. Tefillah, but if he could have hold himself in, his tefillah is considered tefillah, and that's the clause that Rav Yehuda adds on to the Brachos of the Gemara's 9 part 3 a question for ad kama, and how long does he need to be able to hold himself in for before his tefillah is considered problematic? Part 4 answers. Omar Rav Sheish is ad parsa. Parsa is approximately 4 kilometers. 4 kilometers. It's given a time amount is about 72 minutes. So 4 meal, something. I mean, depends how fast you walk. That's the amount of time. The poskim say 72 minutes. Now, that's all end of part 4, and we've found out you can't go now. So just an aside, this is a kind of halacha which calls people who've got a kind of a tendency to become over obsessive and spend hours in the bathroom before davening. This is a halacha that you really have to not get too carried away with, because I have personally come into contact with many people who cause serious damage to their gastrointestinal system by sitting on the toilet for hours and hours before they're davening. It's a waste of time, it's Bil Torah, and it's unnecessary. If you don't know that you need to go to the toilet, you don't need to go to the toilet. And this is now we're going to part 5. There are those that taught this clause not from the words of Rav Zvid or Rav Yehuda, but actually as an attachment to the Brachos itself. But when do these words apply of not being able to hold yourself in? That's when you can't hold yourself in. But if you can hold yourself in, you got a good tefillah. And now it's this time I'm going to add on this as part 6. And now the Gemara asks on the Brisa, Amar Rav Zvid. And I think the Bach is going to add in Rav Yehuda. So this time it was Rav Zvid and Rav Yehuda coming to answer the question and not to ask it. Amar Zvid at Parsa. Amar Zvid v'tem Rav. What the Gemara saying? Rav Zvid v'Amar Rav Zvid v'Amar. Amar Rav Zvid Amar Rav Yehuda. Okay, so the Bach changes to Rav Zvid saying in the name of Rav Yehuda. Amar Rav Zvid Amar Rav Yehuda ad Parsa until a Parsa. Okay, so that's end of part 6, and now we're going to have a sugya which is related, and therefore I'm going to call it part 7. Part 7. Amr Shmuel bar Nachmani Amr Rabbi Yonasan. Say Shmuel bar Nachmani in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. Hanitzrach lenakav. If a person needs to go to the bathroom, Harezer lo yispalal. You should not daven mishum shneimar hikoin likras lekecha. It says, prepare yourself in front of your Lord, Yisrael, Jew. And as a result, one of the things we call, actually it's a common way of referring to a person going to the bathroom prior to davening, it's called hachonis, preparation. Empty out the dirt inside of you and then go to daven. And now into part 8, Shmuel, Rabbi Shmuel Nachmani, Rabbi Yonasan, my dichtiv. What does it say? Shmor raglecho kasher telech al beis Elokim. Now, the reason why we're going to bring this pasuk over here is because it could be because it's Rav Shmuel ben Nachmani, but it's also going to be relevant for a halacha of bathroom habits and davening and the relationship between the two. But the initial drush is going to have nothing to do with that. So you can kind of get knocked off course by thinking, hey, what's this got to do with anything? Oh, maybe it's just authorship. It's actually at the end of the sugya going to tie it back into the bathroom bit. So, but initially we don't. The pasuk says, and this is the pasuk in Koheles, the pasuk says, Shmor raglecha kasher telech al beis Elokim. Guard your legs when you go off to the house of God. And on this, Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani on Rabbi Yonasan says, Shmor atzmecha shelo techeta. Guard yourself that you don't do a sin. V'im techeta, have a korban. And if you do a sin, bring a korban lefanai, in front of me. So that's Shmor raglecha, that don't do a sin. And then if you do the sin, kasher telech al beis Elokim. If you do the sin, then off you go to bring a korban to Hashem. The next words in the pasuk say, v'korev lishmoya, and he will be close to listen. Amarava have a korev lishmoya divrei chachamim shem choitin levin korban v'oisin shuva. So the next words of the pasuk is korev lishmoya. Listen to the advice of the wise men that they say, if you do a chait, don't hold it in, but rather get into a tshuva process and bring a korban and do tshuva. And the next words of the pasuk are mites kesilim, from the giving mites kesilim zevach, from the giving of the fools an offering, which is the next part of the pasuk, which says alti kesilim shchoitim umevin korban vein oisin tshuva. Don't be like the fools that do a sin, bring a korban, but they leave out the tshuva part. And then the next part of the pasuk says, Ki einam yodim na'aseh right, because they don't know how to do bad. The Gemara says, 1 second, if they don't know how to do bad, if so, tzadikim ninu, they tzadikim. What does the pasuk mean? Ella, rather, alti kiksilim, don't be like the fools. Shechoitim mevim korban ve'en yodim im al hatoiva im mevim al toiva he mevim oil ra he mevim. What does it mean that they don't know how to do bad? It means don't be like the fools who bring a korban and they have no idea if they're bringing the korban on good or bad. They're just completely clueless and they're just doing it as a ritualistic rote. Be careful of ritualistic rotes, not good. They can't tell the difference between good and bad, and now they bring a korban lefanai in front of me. Not a good idea. Now, next thing we have Rav Ashi, and it's going to be part of the sugya, part 9 of the sugya. Rav Ashi v'itema Rav Chanina bar Papa, either Rav Ashi or Rav Chanina bar Papa, they take it and pasuk, and now we circle it back. It doesn't mean it says Shmor Raglecha. It's not referring to when you go to the base HaMikdash, you shouldn't do a sin, and if you do bring a korban, it's not talking about korbanos at all. It's talking about tefillah, and it's talking about what does Shmor Raglecha mean? Shmor nekavecha. Guard not your legs, but your openings, meaning the places that dispose of the waste within inside your body. At the time when you're standing in tefillah in front of me. So in other words, this is a pasuk which tells me to cleanse myself before entering into tefillah. Rashi, interestingly enough, says it's not talking about that at all. Even the other Rishonim do. Rashi says it's talking about not passing gas in the midst of tefillah. Shmor Raglecha means stop yourself from releasing gas when you're standing in tefillah. And we're going to see a lot more about that later on. Third thing in the page. Tanu Rabban, we learned the Brisa. Hanichnas, so basically say, so now we're going to go into a whole list of halachas in regard to what do you do with your tefillin. Remember, back in the day, people wore tefillin the entire day. So wherever they would be, they'd be wearing their tefillin. Now what happens when you've got your tefillin on and you need to go to the bathroom? Can you go inside with them, or do you need to take them off? If you need to take them off, where should you put them? Tefillin are extremely, extremely valuable, not only from a perspective of their monetary worth, but more from a perspective of their value as a davar shebekadusha. So what do? Do you want to bring them into the toilet to protect them? Do you want to leave them outside? Let's go ahead and see what the Brisa teaches us. A person who's going into a toilet, you should take off your tefillin 4 cubits away, approximately 2 meters, 6 foot, and then you should go in. So you take off your tefillin, and then you should go in. Now, at this point in time, the Brisa hasn't discussed what do you do with your tefillin after you've taken them off. It's just talking about the fact that you can't wear them whilst you're in the process of toileting. Next part of the Gemara, part 2. We only learned this in regard to a beis hakisei, a toilet cover, which is permanent. But if it's a impermanent, it's a temporary toilet, so then you don't have to take them off 4 cubits away. You can take them off and go to the bathroom immediately. Now, just to give you a bit of a sense of what were these toilets like, so Rashi points out these were not, obviously they weren't indoor toilets, obviously they didn't have plumbing, and there were 2 kinds of toilets. There was a toilet where literally a person just went and defecated on the ground, and the excrement remained above ground. There was no hole. And Rashi says that's what kind of the toilets are talking about here. There was just a pile of excrement, and that was called a base kisei kavua. Now I imagine it was probably situated in a more secluded spot, and that's why people would gravitate towards a particular spot. So if you're going towards that particular spot where there's excrement already lying, you have to take off your tefillin 4 cubits beforehand. But if it's an impermanent basic kisei, what does that mean? It means no one's used the spot before. You're the first one initiating it, so then you don't have to take off your tefillin within 2 meters. You can take them off in immediate proximity and go to the toilet immediately. Now, what happens when you finish going? What should you do? And when you this is all part 2, further qualifications. And when you leave, you should distance yourself for amatz. That doesn't make a difference if it was a basic kisei permanent or not, because once you've initiated, even though you're the first one to go there, it's now become a basic kisei kavua, and therefore you need that dal amatz worth of distance from it, and that's pretty much part 2 of the Gemara. So we had a Brachos, and then we had qualifications in terms of when you take it off, what kind of basic kisei are we referring to, and now we're going to part 3, which is going to go a little bit deeper into, well, what do you do with your tefillin? There was a question asked by the Bnei Yeshiva, and it had obviously, as always, 2 sides to it. What would it be? What would the halacha be if a person can go into with his tefillin on into a basic kisei kavua, but he's not going to do gedolim, to defecate? He's going there lahashtin, to urinate. So what is the halacha? Since he's not going to do the actual act of defecation himself, so therefore, even though the spot itself is smelly, but he's not going there for that reason, is it permitted for him to go inside, or perhaps not? I don't really understand what the 2 studying over here, and the Gemara doesn't give us the benefit of an oidilma, so we'll have to figure it out for ourselves. That's your job. So in part 4, Ravina gives us an answer. Ravina Shari. So Ravina said, perfectly okay, you can go into a bathroom with your tefillin on in order to urinate. And in part 5, Rav Adabar gives us a different answer. Rav Adabar Masna says, Asar, it is prohibited. Part 6, Asar Shalu le Rava. So both of them went, and then they asked Rava, and Amalu, Rava replied to them, Asur. He said, no, it is absolutely forbidden. Why? Not because, actually, of the fact that you can't put tefillin in such a smelly place whilst you're wearing them, but for a completely separate reason. Chashinen shema yifne bohen. We are suspicious that once you're already in that toileting place, you may decide to switch from pure urination to defecation, and that would be a problem. You may not be aware of the fact that you're wearing a tefillin, and therefore to prohibit that possible thing from occurring, we say, take them off before you go inside. Now there are those that say, for Amila, others say that what Rava meant was, perhaps you will pass gas in them, which is also a problem, especially when a person urinates, they relax the sphincter muscle, and gas can come out. Kiyadua. Tanya idach. Now we have in part 7 another brisa. Hanichnas lebeis ha-kisei kavua. Sorry, did I randomly make up a number there? Let's go back just to make sure we got the numbers right. We've got the brisa of nichnas lebeis ha-kisei. We've got the limitation of Racha bar Huna Amar Sheishes of the difference between base kisei kavua and arai. We've got in part 3 the boilahu of what you can do. We've got in part 4 Rav Ada's answer, Ravina's answer, and then 5 we've got Rav Ada bar Masna's answer, and then we've got Rava's answer that is going to take us to part 6 and 7. So yes, 1 second. So we're back to statement, qualification, which is another statement, question, answer 1, answer 2, answer 3. That's all part 6. And then we've got right now a new, if I can find it, a new brisa. And that's going to be in part 7. Tanya idach. Hanichnas. Another brisa. Hanichnas beis kisei kavua. Person that goes into a permanent bathroom. So now, here we have the first indication of where you should put your tefillin when you do take them off. So a person that takes off their tefillin is going to Beis Kisei Kavua, a permanent toilet. He should take off his tefillin 4 amas away, as we learned above. But now we have an additional halacha. He should place him in a window close to Rishus Harabim. Remember, the windows of yesteryear were not filled with glass at all. They were just openings in the wall for people to see through. So you could easily perch them on the sill of that kind of window. And when he goes out, he should distance himself 4 amas and put his tefillin divrei Beis Shammai. These are the words of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel say, no, you don't leave them outside. You should hold them in your hand and go make in the toilet. That's the second opinion in our Brisa. Rabbi Akiva says you should hold them in your clothing and enter in. So he's a little bit like a Beis Hillel, but he adds in that they should be covered in a piece of clothing. The Gemara interrupts the Brisa for a moment of clarity, and it says, and I'm not going to count this as a separate part. We're still on part 7. The Gemara says, do you really think he should put it in his clothes? Perhaps sometimes he will forget them, and they'll fall on the ground. So we correct what Rebbe Kippur meant was he's holding them in his hand in the beged v'nichnas, and then he goes inside. And Rebbe Akiva continues, and then you can leave them in the holes which are close next to the basic kisei. But he should definitely not put them inside the holes, I suppose the crevices in the wall, which are close to the public domain. Because people walking by may see these tefillin and they'll take it for themselves, and that would be it's not a problem that we're going to lose your tefillin. Look at this, a really strange reason. And it will come to bring a person who gets his tefillin stolen into a very compromised and awkward position for no fault of his own. Why? There once was a student. He actually left his tefillin in the crevices close to Rishus Harabim where people were passing by. And came a prostitute, one prostitute. And she wanted to, obviously, she was a nasty piece of work, and she wanted to embarrass the student. And obviously it was well known that she was a prostitute, so she took them, and then in a very conniving way, she came to the study hall where this person learned. She went to the yeshiva, and she said, look what this student gave me for my services, implying that he'd paid her for her services with his tefillin. It was completely spurious, it was all made up. But unfortunately, when he heard about what had happened, this Talmud, he was so mortified, he climbed to the top of the roof, and he fell off, which means he committed suicide. And he died. At that point in time, they decreed that you should hold them in your clothes, inside of your hand, and get in. So already when we look back at Rabbi Akiva, it was a little bit strange, because he tells us that you have to hold them in your hands and go inside. And then he said afterwards, don't put them in the crevices next to the Rishus Harabim, put them in the crevices next to the bathroom. He said to them, he said to them that you should put them in, you should hold them in your hands and go inside. And then he said you should put them in the crevices close to the toilet, and not in the crevices close to the Rishus Harabim. And really the reason, the rationale behind this halacha only comes out at the end because of the chashash, and therefore you see that the holding them in your hands is actually a latter takana after this terrible Maisa which occurred. Now I always have a question with these Maisa when it says something happened and then we made a gezerah. It seems like a random thing to have occurred. It doesn't seem like this was a real kind of, this is a common occurrence. So things were happening the whole time. Like you had these zonos coming and taking people's tefillin and then presenting the base medrash. So why, because of a one-off Maisa, would we make this decree? I don't know. It's something for you to try and figure out for yourselves. Next Brisa, new Brisa, Tony Rabbanan. So now we see how far this goes. another kind of placement of tefillin. Initially, they made a takana that sounds like Rabbi Akiva, that he said that you should put them in the crevices close to the toilet. But then the weasels would come and steal the tefillin while the person was making. So they said better put them in the crevices, in the windows, those big open holes next to Rosh Hashanah. But then wayfarers, people passing by would take them, which means that this price is not thinking about zonis and takonis. His kinisha oisam biyadav v'nichnas. And therefore, they made a takana that you just hold them in your hand and go inside. So this price is clearly not going like Rabbi Akiva, Amar Rabbi Amam Yashabrei de Rabbi Shua ben Levi, or Barbare, changed on the side. Says Rabbi Yasha, the son of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Rabbi Shua ben Levi's grandson. Halacha, what is halacha? Goylen kimin sefer v'oichzem b'mino kineged libo. The halacha is you should take them in with you. You should wrap them up like you would a scroll and hold them in your right hand facing your heart. Amar Rabbi Yosef ben Yomi min Yomi. Amar Rav Nachman uvad shet lo teretzoy yotzes mitachas yodei tefach. Provided the straps doesn't go out, one of the straps doesn't go outside of your hands for a tefach's length, because the straps do have kedusha and you don't want to disdain them. These halachas only apply when there's still time in the day to put them back on. But if it's already it's towards night time, you're not going to be putting them back on. Then you make for them a sack, a tefillin bag, which has a volume of a tefach, which is a hand's breadth, and you can put them on the ground outside the bathroom. In other words, the fact that they're in a bag which has a tefach means it has it is a separate domain to the ground. It's not as if you're leaving on the ground. It's as if there's something interfering between them and the ground, and therefore it's okay. In the day you should roll them up as you would a scroll, put them next to you in your right hand facing your heart, and echoing the salacha that at night you should make for them a bag which is a tefach big and put them down on the ground. Abai comes and limits us further, and he says the only time you need to have a kli which is as big as a tefach if it was designed specifically for tefillin. But if you find another random bag to put them in, even though it's not tefach, it will work because it's not designed specifically for tefillin, and therefore it's a separate entity. It's not considered subsumed by the fact that since it's designed for tefillin, it becomes bottled to the tefillin, annulled to the tefillin. If it would be less than a tefach, no. If it's not designed for the tefillin, even though it's less than tefach, it will be okay to put them on the ground. And now Rav Zutra in the name of, and some say Rav Ashi, bring a rai. Taida is introducing us to a rai, a proof. There's a locha that if you have small little vessels, which are really small, they're not tefach, and they're in underneath the same roof as a corpse, and that would normally transfer the impurity of the corpse onto anything in that entire environment. But if they are sealed, there's a locha, earthenware little vessels which are sealed do not contract tumah. So you see that since they're not designated for, meaning since they're not designated for since they are small, even though they are small and not a tefach wide, they can still be differentiated from the rest of the place, and they don't contract tumah. Says Rabbi Yochanan, when we would follow Rabbi Yochanan, when he would want to go to the bathroom, if he'd be carrying with him a sefer, a holy work, Hava Yahavlan, he would give it to us. But if he'd be carrying his tefillin, wearing his tefillin, he would not give them to us. He said, since the rabbis permitted me to take them to the bathroom in order to guard them, Nantaran. Interesting, they will guard me. Meaning, since the rabbis gave me the permission to put my tefillin, to take my tefillin to the bathroom, and it's well known that there are certain spiritual demons that inhabit the bathroom area. It's a dirty place and the demons like to hang out there. So he's going to take his tefillin with him, and that will protect him from these spiritual destroyers. And that brings to a conclusion Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the beauty of learning Torah and do lots of Chazorah.